Hey guys, just coming back at you from Therapy Rocks. And again, we're talking about symptoms of complex PTSD, which is also called long-term childhood trauma. It's also called developmental trauma. We're reading out of the book, The Upset That Comes with Little, which is a handbook for trauma survivors struggling with spontaneous age regression that I wrote to help my patients. So we've covered a lot in this book so far. If you haven't been there, haven't seen any of those videos, go back on the channel and look. I've covered just almost every aspect of the book on video, so you can listen to those videos, and if you want a copy of the book, let me know. I'm in the process of getting it put up onto Amazon so that it's a little bit easier to expedite you getting the book, but in the meantime, people have just reached out to ask me to send that to them, and then we've made arrangements for payment. So also, if you like what you hear, hit the like button and subscribe, because that way this information will get out to more people. We know we're not getting rich off YouTube, so it's not necessarily about that, but the reason I started this channel is because I'm only one person and I can only see so many people per week, and I really think this information is so helpful that it needs to get out to as many people as possible. So thanks for sharing these videos and subscribing. We're talking today about dysregulation, okay? So dysregulation is the new buzzword for survival mode, for hypervigilance, for hyperarousal, really hyperarousal, that goes along with complex PTSD. It's actually one of the earlier symptoms that people talked about when they talked about PTSD, and definitely complex PTSD, which is that hyperarousal, that just always being on edge, always being amped up, feeling like you can't settle down, mind racing, panicky, dissociated, can't think, can't focus, all of those things that come when you get activated, when you get triggered into an emotional flashback. So dysregulation can manifest in lots of different ways for trauma survivors. So a person who's dysregulated can be dysregulated all the time, okay, at baseline. A person who has very severe symptoms can just be dysregulated all the time. And so it makes it difficult to function, difficult to focus, difficult to walk through your day and get anything done. You may be sitting and having lunch with a friend and you cannot even remember a word they said afterwards because you weren't really present, because you were dissociated or you were dysregulated. Okay, so dysregulation, the term itself is a poor ability to manage emotional responses or to keep them within an acceptable range of typical emotional reactions. This can refer to a wide range of emotions, including sadness, anger, irritability, and frustration. It's the poor ability to manage emotional responses or to keep them within an acceptable range of typical emotional reactions. These reactions of sadness, anger, irritability, or frustration. So let me try to simplify this a little bit. When you first have a baby, you are spending, as a mom, if you're a good mom or a good enough mom, you're spending a lot of time helping that child regulate their feelings, starting way back at the beginning. So baby cries, mom is there, she soothes, she rocks, she changes the diaper, she feeds, she begins to become very attuned to what that child needs. What does that, what does this cry mean versus this cry? And so a parent, a really good parent, over time, with patterned, repetitive, trustworthy responses, starts to help that child regulate their emotions. So as the child gets older, that parent again is trying to help that child regulate their emotions by helping that child identify how they're feeling, showing them how to handle the feeling. And I'm sure, I don't know, those parents out there, when I was parenting, I remember doing a lot of that, helping the child regulate their emotions. and just providing grief support. I remember a time when the most wonderful thing happened when I was raising my son. This happened several times, and it really taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of what I didn't get, and it taught me a lot of what we need. But my son had given his bike away. I tell this story to patients all the time. He'd given his bike away, and it was his first little bike with training wheels, and he was only about 2.5 years old because he was an early bike rider. So he's about 2.5, let's say 3 years old, and he wanted to give the bike to the little boy kitty corner across the street because he didn't have one. So we gave the bike to JJ, and Casey was so excited because Casey had a brand new bike then. And probably about a week or two later, we saw the bike out in the trash heap. We put our trash out on the curb for the garbage man to go by and pick it up, and Casey saw his bike and it was in pieces. So Casey lost it. He was crying, and so I just put him up on my lap. We were sitting out on the back deck in a little rocking lawn chair, and I just put him up on my lap, and I just said, "Oh, honey, you're feeling so awful about this. You thought he really liked your bike, and you didn't think he was going to tear it apart, or you wouldn't have given it to him." And just kept giving him a lot of empathy. And as I did that, he would cry, and he would say, "Yeah, and I can't believe he did that, and I want to go get that bike, and that was my bike." And then I just continued to say, "Yeah, that was yours, and you had no idea, and you gave that to him, and now you're so upset." And I just provided grief support for him while he moved through that grief. And pretty soon, after about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, he just rocked. He just kind of settled down in my arms, and then he just jumped off my lap and went and played. And it was over, and it never came up again. And so this is what we need to do for our kids, and this is what should have happened for us in a perfect world. And then all of our parts would be integrated, and we wouldn't have parts left behind, and little kid parts here and there, and running the show, because we would have what we needed to just move through grief. Life is just a series of grief, of things that come our way that we have to grieve. And being angry about something is part of grief. Being frustrated about something is part of grief. Being irritated about something is just part of grief. So little kids run into lots of situations like that as they're growing up, and the worst thing you can do as a parent is say to your kid, "Just get over it. You gave it away. It's none of your business now. You gave it away, and that's all there is to it. So just stop your crying and just go play. Stop being such a sissy." My goodness. So what's that doing? That is shutting down the emotion. That kid now has no idea what he feels, and he also feels ashamed. He's been shamed now for having an emotion. And so that grief incident doesn't get resolved. It doesn't get processed through. It gets stored inside. And then it continues to get stored inside, and that stuff continues to get stored inside. And over time, it becomes a part. It becomes an action system. It becomes an aspect of who you are and how you approach life and how you deal with loss and grief and disappointment. So I said a lot. We started out with dysregulation, the concept of dysregulation. Babies are born dysregulated. And if we grew up in a home where we didn't get any of those things that I just mentioned, then we're going to be still walking around with parts of us that are dysregulated. Okay, so now we're left having to soothe ourselves. We're left having to provide grief support to our own parts, and reaching out to others to ask for grief support, going to therapy to get empathy and to get help with healing and talking about our griefs, our old griefs, even if they're old, our old grievances. So we have to now find a way to provide that for our parts so that they can catch up to us, so that they can catch up to our most spiritual, our most grown-up self. And again, so that looks like, I'll show you a picture. I don't know if you can see it, but so it looks more like that, where you see all the parts as one, being managed by the most grown-up part of us, or the most spiritual part of us, however you choose to look at it. So that's what dysregulation is, and it's really something that needs to be managed if you're a trauma survivor, because it can really get in the way of healing, because it keeps you in a place where you're not fully present. So enough said about that. That's it for today, and I hope to see you again soon. Praying for you, thinking of you all, and hoping that you have everything you need to heal and get well. God bless.